Hey everyone, ready to unlock the secrets of money talk.
We're diving deep into Money Talks, English conversations on finance.
It's all about giving you the tools to navigate those tricky financial conversations in English.
Whether you're talking about budgeting with friends or closing deals in the boardroom,
We're breaking down those confusing money idioms
exploring essential vocabulary.
and giving you the confidence to sound like a pro, no matter the situation.
Think of this as your crash course in financial fluency.
So buckle up and get ready to level up your money talk game.
It's amazing how much idioms spice up financial discussions, you know?
Yeah?
You've probably heard money doesn't grow on trees, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's a simple phrase,
Yeah,
but it speaks volumes about our relationship with money.
totally. Like,
Yeah.
growing up, anytime I asked for something a little pricey, my parents would always hit me with that line.
Right.
It definitely made me think twice about how I spent my allowance. But what I found interesting is the Source podcast mentions that this idiom is more prevalent in cultures that really value hard work.
That's a great point. It suggests that our background can really shape how we view earning and spending.
Yeah.
Now, another idiom the podcast highlights is to break the bank.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
And it's not just about something being expensive.
Right.
It implies a level of sacrifice
Right.
that makes you question if it's truly worth it.
Exactly. Like, you wouldn't say ordering takeout broke the bank.
Right.
But planning a big trip to Europe, that's a different story.
Exactly. It's about that tipping point where the cost might outweigh the enjoyment.
Yeah.
Now, here's one that's not directly about money, but I bet you've used it. A penny for your thoughts.
Oh, all the time. Especially when someone seems lost in thought.
Exactly.
But how does this tie back to finances?
Well, sometimes our financial worries can show on our faces, right?
Mhm.
This phrase could be a gentle way to open up a conversation about what's going on in someone's life, maybe even their financial life.
That's a really insightful connection. It shows how money matters can be intertwined with our overall well-being.
Absolutely.
Now, the podcast also delves into some business idioms, like to be in the red versus to be in the black.
I find it fascinating how these color metaphors instantly convey the state of a business.
Yeah.
Red, danger, warning.
Huh?
Black, stability, success.
Right.
It's like a built-in emotional response.
It's amazing how language can be so powerful, even in the world of finance.
Absolutely.
But idioms are just one piece of the puzzle.
Right.
To really master money talk, we need to understand the essential vocabulary, too.
Absolutely.
So let's start with income, which is any money you earn,
Right.
whether it's from your job, investments, or even renting out that spare room.
Yeah, it's all about that money flowing in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But what I found interesting is that the Source podcast mentions that being open about income levels is totally normal in some cultures,
Right.
but considered taboo in others.
It makes you wonder, why is that?
Yeah.
Is it about social harmony, fear of judgment, or something else entirely?
Yeah.
It definitely highlights how cultural context shapes these conversations.
It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good reminder to be mindful of those unspoken rules, especially when we're talking about money. Now, let's flip the script and talk about expenses. All that money going out the door.
And this is where things can get tricky.
Yeah.
We all have those necessary expenses, right?
Right.
Rent, groceries, bills.
Ah.
But it's often the little things that add up without us realizing it.
Oh, tell me about it. Those sneaky lattes and online shopping sprees can really make a dent in your bank account.
Absolutely.
That's where budgeting comes in, right?
Yeah.
You're creating a plan for how you'll spend and save.
Exactly, but it's not just about restricting yourself. Think of a budget as your roadmap to financial freedom. It's about making conscious choices that align with your goals.
I like it.
Whether it's buying a house, traveling the world, or just having that peace of mind knowing you're in control.
I love that perspective. Takes away that negative connotation of budgeting and makes it empowering. Now, the podcast dives into some specific budgeting methods like the 50-30-20 rule. Have you ever tried that one?
I have. It's a great starting point for many people. Allocating 50% of your income to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to savings and debt repayment. It helps you visualize where your money is going and adjust accordingly.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like a built-in system for prioritizing your finances. Now, speaking of prioritizing, let's talk about savings. You know, that safety net, that cushion for the future.
But it's interesting how the concept of saving varies across cultures.
Yeah.
Some societies prioritize immediate gratification, sharing wealth within their communities, while others emphasize long-term planning.
I wonder if that's influenced by economic stability or even historical
Right.
factors. Like, if your ancestors lived through periods of scarcity, maybe they were more inclined to save for a rainy day.
That's a fascinating thought. It shows how deeply ingrained these attitudes can be. And finally, we get to the D word, debt.
Ugh, that can be a loaded topic.
It can be.
But as the Source podcast points out, not all debt is created equal.
Exactly. There's good debt, like a mortgage on a house that's likely to appreciate in value.
Right.
And then there's bad debt, which often comes with high interest rates and can spiral out of control.
So how can our listeners tell the difference? What are some red flags to watch out for?
Well, good debt usually involves a calculated risk with the potential for long-term returns. Bad debt often feels impulsive, driven by immediate gratification rather than strategic planning.
Okay.
Think of it this way. If you're constantly stressed about making payments, that's a sign something might be off.
That's a really helpful distinction. It's not about avoiding debt altogether, but rather making smart choices that align with your financial goals. Now, the podcast goes beyond just defining these terms. It actually gives real-life examples of how to use this vocabulary in conversations.
Yeah, they've got a great scenario where you're talking to a friend who's struggling with debt.
That's perfect. Because it's one thing to understand the terms, but it's another to know how to apply them in a supportive and helpful way. So walk us through it. What would you say to a friend in that situation?
Well, first off, it's important to listen without judgment.
Yeah.
Let your friend share their experience and validate their feelings.
Okay.
Then, you could gently suggest some of the tools we've discussed.
Like creating a budget to track their expenses.
Exactly. And you could even offer to help them find resources like budgeting apps or financial counseling services.
The Source podcast also mentions encouraging your friend to explore ways to increase their income.
Yes, but it's crucial to be mindful of their situation. Suggesting a side hustle might be helpful for some, but not feasible for others.
It's all about tailoring your advice to their individual needs and circumstances. I love that the podcast emphasizes the importance of empathy in these conversations. It's not about lecturing. It's about offering support and understanding.
Absolutely. Sometimes just knowing that you're not alone in these struggles can be incredibly reassuring.
Now, the podcast also delves into something I find fascinating: the cultural nuances surrounding money talk.
It's a topic that often goes overlooked, but it can really impact how we communicate and interpret financial matters.
For example, the Source podcast mentions that some cultures are very open about discussing specific numbers,
Right.
salaries, investments, and so on,
Uh-huh.
while others consider it taboo.
And even within English-speaking cultures, there can be differences in how we approach money conversations depending on the context.
Right, like in a professional setting, it might be perfectly normal to discuss financial details.
Sure.
But bringing up your salary at a dinner party could be seen as a major faux pas.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It makes you wonder, why is there this distinction between personal and professional contexts? Is it purely about professionalism, or are there deeper societal norms at play?
That's a great question. It's like there's this unspoken code of conduct around money talk that varies depending on the situation. So how can our listeners navigate these cultural differences? What's the best way to approach these conversations without accidentally crossing any lines? Well, the podcast suggests sticking to general topics unless the other person specifically initiates a more detailed discussion. For instance, instead of asking, "How much do you make?" you could say, "Are you happy with your current career path?"
That's a much more subtle way to gauge their financial satisfaction without being intrusive. But what if someone keeps pushing you for more personal financial information than you're comfortable sharing? How do you politely decline without coming across as rude or evasive?
That's a tricky situation. The podcast offers some graceful ways to deflect or redirect the conversation. You could say something like, "I'm a little private about my finances," or "I'm still figuring things out on that front."
Those are great strategies. It's all about setting boundaries and respecting your own comfort level. And remember, clear communication and empathy go a long way in navigating these sensitive conversations, regardless of cultural differences.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into money talks, I feel like we've unearthed a gold mine of information here.
It's amazing what we can learn from just dissecting the language we use around money, isn't it?
Absolutely. We started with those vivid idioms like money doesn't grow on trees and break the bank. And we discovered how they reflect cultural attitudes and spending habits.
Right.
Then we tackled some essential vocabulary, from income and expenses to the fine points of good debt versus bad debt.
Yeah.
We even explored real-life scenarios, like how to offer support to a friend who's wrestling with debt,
Right.
or navigate those sometimes awkward conversations about money.
Yeah, those can be tough sometimes.
And we even ventured into the fascinating world of cultural perspectives. We saw how what's considered polite in one culture could be a no-no in another.
Absolutely.
But here's the thing that really struck me. It's not just about learning the right words.
Right.
It's about grasping the deeper meaning behind them.
Exactly. Language shapes how we think about money. And by becoming more aware of that, we can make more informed and hopefully better financial decisions.
For sure. So as you go forth and conquer the world of money talk, remember this. It's not about being perfect.
Yeah.
It's about being confident and clear in your communication.
And don't be afraid to ask questions. The more we learn about money, the better equipped we are to manage it wisely.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe even achieve those financial goals we've always dreamed of.
Absolutely.
So keep exploring, keep learning, and most importantly, keep those money conversations flowing.
I like that. Keep those conversations flowing.
That's it for today's deep dive.
See ya.
We'll catch you next time.